Live from the campus of Washington and Lee University with news for Rockbridge County, this is the Rockbridge Report.
Good evening and welcome to the Rockbridge Report's live midterm election coverage. I'm Avalon Purnell.
And I'm Jenny Helwig. Virginia polls just closed at 7, so let's take a look at the statewide races we're going to be watching tonight.
We're keeping a close eye on Virginia's 6th congressional district, where incumbent Ben Cline from the Republican Party is running against Democratic candidate Jennifer Lewis for a seat in the House of Representatives. Lewis ran against Cline in 2018. Now she's going for a rematch in a district that's become more and more Republican over time. Later, we'll be showing you a breakdown for how each candidate did district-wide, as well as in Buena Vista, Lexington, and Rockbridge County.
The current partisan breakdown of Virginia's U.S. House delegation is 7 Democratic seats and 4 Republican, but that might change in today's election. We'll be watching the races closely.
In Lexington, voters will decide today who they want representing them on City Council. 4 candidates are facing off for 3 seats. The race pits incumbents David Sigler and Chuck Smith against newcomers Nicholas Betts and Colette Berry-Reck.
Lexington voters also had the chance to vote for more voting in 2024. If the school board referendum passes, the selection of Lexington City School Board members will change from City Council appointments to elections. We will hear the referendum results, as well as a live interview with the Rockbridge Advocate editor, Doug Harwood, in our live show at 9 o'clock tonight.
In Goshen, incumbent Thomas O. McCraw is running uncontested for the mayoral seat. McCraw has lived in Goshen for 15 years and has spent 12 years in the town's government. 2 candidates, Michael E. Hicks and David C. Robertson, are running uncontested for multiple seats on Goshen's town council.
In Glasgow, newcomers Natalie H. Harris and Marcy R. Hill are running uncontested for 3 seats on the town council. Voters can also submit up to 3 write-in candidates instead. Lexington polls opened at 6 a.m. today. Citizens voted for their U.S. House Representative, City Council positions, and the school board referendum. We'll now take a look at what the mood and turnout was at the Lexington voting precinct, where reporters Stephanie Chigolori and Tyler Palisha spoke to voters earlier today.
Lexington residents took advantage of a sunny day to cast their votes at the Rockbridge Area Relief Association today. National issues drove some voters to the polls.
I believe in a woman's right to choose, for example, and I believe that the last presidential election was valid, and I want to make sure that I support people who have thoughts along those lines.
Other voters prioritized local issues. City Council currently appoints the school board. There is a referendum on the ballot to elect it.
Who's going to get to do it if they change it? The community. And that feels important to you, right, to have a say in it? Yeah.
Several city council candidates stood outside the precinct and addressed voters as they came and went.
I think it's really important if you're running for elected office that you get out and talk to voters and see what issues are important to them and meet folks and see what citizens are concerned about.
Election officials say the turnout has been strong and the process smooth throughout the day.
We've had voters, if they've needed help, we're here to help them. We have a lot of great officers of election who are trained to help if there are any potential questions or any difficulties. So we have not had any difficulties so far.
I'm here at the Rockbridge Area Relief Association Lexington Voter Precinct. It's 2 and a beautiful day. We've seen a steady stream of voters for the past 2 hours. We're looking forward to see the results roll in. Steph Chigolori in Lexington for the Rockbridge Report.
Wow, what a turnout, guys.
I know, right? I wonder if the weather had anything to do with it. Josh, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, typically we do see nasty voter turnout when there's nasty weather. If there's rain or snow, we're going to get lower turnouts. But today, looking at the current conditions, we can see that we've actually had pretty nice weather. High of 64 degrees today and low of 38. Looking at our barometric pressure, we can see that there was a barometric pressure of 31 inches with a wind speed of around 8 miles per hour. So a little bit windy coming off of this really nice weather that we've had earlier in the week. Humidity settling in at around 47% too. Looking around the state at our radar, we can see it's pretty clear. Again, we're not really seeing a lot of rain or snow that would affect voter turnout. And looking at regional temperatures, we can see everybody's pretty much settled in the mid-50s, high 40s. Charlottesville 54 degrees, Stanton 51, 49 degrees here in Lexington and Buena Vista. And looking further west, we can see 47 degrees in Covington and a little bit warmer, 60 degrees in Roanoke. Looking ahead towards the week, we can see we're going to be keeping similar weather on Wednesday, high of 59 and a low of 37 degrees. We're going to have some rain moving in on Thursday and Friday, but highs are still going to be around the same, 64 degrees, lows in the 50s and 40s. And as we're finishing up our week, Saturday we're seeing a high of 55 degrees and a low of 29. Sunday we're seeing a high of 46 degrees, low of 21. So it's really going to be cooling down as we finish up our week. We're going to start feeling some of that November weather. That's all. Back to you all.
Thanks, Josh. Coming up after the break, voters are getting the final word in reshaping the political landscape, both in their home states and in Washington. Learn exactly what's at stake in today's election.
We'll also take you live to the Democratic Party's headquarters in downtown Lexington to check on their mood as we're all waiting for results.
Welcome back to the live election night coverage of the Rockbridge Report. We're now going to take a look at the stakes of the election nationwide. Seats in both chambers of Congress are contested, in addition to dozens of governor's races and other state-level contests that will set the table for the 2024 presidential campaigns. Officials expect a high turnout with a record number 45 million ballots already cast pre-election. Isabel Rosales is on Capitol Hill with what's at stake.
Voters making their voices heard by the tens of millions. Polls nearing their final hours across the country. Top of mind?
The economy is definitely a big one.
What's really important to me is basic human rights and how our government is protecting them.
Candidates themselves hitting the polls and greeting voters. The stakes couldn't be higher for both parties.
Whenever you look at the Senate, I agree it's going to be close. Everybody has to get out and vote and participate this election cycle because the importance of it.
My goodness, 2022 is perhaps the most important election of our lifetimes.
Republicans just 5 seats away from a House majority. And it may come down to a handful of battleground states to decide the future of the Senate. The GOP just 1 seat away from flipping control. And the potential next House Speaker already laying out next steps.
I think the first thing you'll see is a bill to control the border. First thing we're going to do is make sure an economy that's strong.
Looming in the background, contentious court fights with more than 100 lawsuits filed pre-election, many in battleground states. In Washington, I'm Isabel Rosales.
And now, live from the Lexington and Rockbridge area Democratic Party headquarters, we have our anchor, Caitlin Tompkins. How is the atmosphere over there, Caitlin?
3, 2, 1, go. It's a lot of buzz over here. I'm here with Lexington City Council candidate Nicholas Betts and Democratic Committee Chair David Mayersky. How are y'all tonight?
Doing well.
Good, how are you?
Thanks for having us here.
Thank you for being here. So the Republicans are actually expected to win the House by a comfortable margin. How is your party staying optimistic in the face of that?
What we're hearing from poll greeters is that they were really anxious to take the literature that we had for Jennifer Lewis, which is a good sign that people are voting for her in larger numbers than we would expect otherwise.
And a lot of things happen locality by locality, and here in Lexington, it's historically blue, and I think the results here in Lexington will be similar to normal.
Okay, so what do you think would be a good indicator for a surprisingly good night for Democrats in Virginia and nationwide?
I think a good indicator is turnout. I think turnout was pretty good, both early turnout and turnout at the polls today here in Lexington. So I think that should help out Democrats.
Yeah, early voting turnout in the county was 3 times what it was in 2018, which is an incredibly good indicator that things are going well.
Okay. And there was a lot of outrage these past few months over the Supreme Court's turning of Roe v. Wade. Do you think this anger is sustainable enough to get people out to the voting booths?
I think so. I think it's an important issue. I think there's a lot of important issues, but I think that is top of mind for a lot of voters.
And I think a lot of women voters feel that.
So would you say this ballot is more about voters' top priority is abortion rights and voting access or crime and inflation?
I think it's going to depend on the voter. I think that, let's say in Lexington has a very low crime rate. Inflation does affect a lot of places, but I think Democrats have policies to combat inflation, like, looking at how to make housing more affordable and student loan, reduction. So I think Democrats are looking at ways to combat inflation as well.
And what we're hearing from voters is concern over the Klein's activities around January 6th. There's a lot of anxiety about that. and I think that's going to show in the results.
Thank you so much for being here. Back to y'all in the newsroom.
Thank you, Caitlin. We're looking forward to a live interview from the Republican gathering at Salerno's later during our 9 p.m. newscast. Coming up on the Rockbridge Report, we'll also have a conversation with our student election experts who will help us get a better grasp of the contested races.
Welcome back to the Rockbridge Report. I'm Avalon Purnell.
And I'm Jenny Helwig, and we're joined now by our student experts, Blake Ramsey and Pearson Gamage, who will help us understand exactly what's at stake in today's election. Blake, Pearson, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Absolutely. So first question for both of you guys. We're curious, which races are you guys watching right now?
I'm currently watching the 2nd Congressional District, the 7th Congressional District, and the 10th Congressional District.
Predominantly because the Georgia election just closed, I'm looking at the Georgia Senate election between Herschel Walker and his opponent, incumbent Raphael Warnock.
So Blake, what would be a good night for you?
Well, I've given up on the Democrats winning the House. I think the Republicans are going to take that, but I do think that there are enough toss-ups for the Senate race in which Democrats can maintain control of the Senate, either in a 50-50 split once again or in a 51-49 Democrat majority.
Absolutely. And Pearson, I'll raise the same question to you. What would be a good night for you?
Well, zooming into Virginia, I think looking at the 2nd Congressional District, Jen Kiggins versus Elena Loria, who's been mostly focusing her time on the January 6th committee. I think the 2nd District historically has been a bellwether, so I think it will be a really important race to watch in terms of how the House majority, how far that will be, and that will be a good indicator for the Senate as well.
So opening it up to both of you guys, what do you think the margin will be on the 6th district race?
In the 2020 general election, Ben Klein won with a little less than 2/3 of the majority at 64%. I see that being much greater with current voting trends turning red. So I'd guess something of the upper 60s in terms of him winning in the 6th district.
I'm not going to say a bit less. I think his involvement in January 6th is going to hurt him a bit, even in a very conservative district that we are in, that the 6th district is in. And I also think the abortion issue is really going to play a part in this, in which he wins by a bit less, but obviously he'll still win.
Absolutely. And another question for both sides. How do you think Virginia's U.S. House delegation will break down tonight?
Well, looking at past voter trends and zooming now into 2022, I think we see 4 solidly Republican districts and 4 solidly Democrat districts. I think 2 will be a good indicator of how 7 and 10 end up going. So I think if Kiggins wins in the 7th and Yesli Vega in the Kiggins in the 2nd, Yesli Vega in the 7th, and possibly Hung Kao in the 10th, I think that would be a really good indicator of how red the House will be, and see how those close Senate races will pan out as well.
Yeah, she took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, you have the 4-4 split. That's pretty much, we know what's going to happen for Republican, for Democrat. And the 3 just seats in between kind of are what's deciding what actually happens with the House of Delegates.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Blake and Pearson. And that is all for now. The Rockbridge Report will return at 9 p.m. to update you on the results of the contested races.
We'll also report live from the Republicans gathering at Salerno's downtown Lexington and get their reaction to the results.
You can keep watching Channel 18, where we'll report numbers as they come in all evening long. And check out our website, rockbridgereport.wlu.edu, for continued updates on the big stories of the night.